Hello, cheese straws this week. I have a recipe for you as always, so please download the recipe and have a look at it. It takes you step by step what to do for cheese straws. So we'll make a start. Here I have some flour and some mustard that I have already sifted and put into a bowl. Before I did that, I turned the oven on to 200 degrees or gas mask 6, and I've also greased a baking tray, so that's all ready to go. And hopefully you have a nice big bowl so you can put all your ingredients in. I find that's much better. So sift your flour and mustard into there. I'm using half the amount because I only fancy making a couple of cheese straws, but equally you could make double the amount if you want to make more. It's entirely up to you. So once you've done this, once you've sifted it, use your fingertips and rub in the fat. So again, this is half the amount of fat here. This is supposed to be 50 grams, but I've just used 25 grams. So pop it in, there we go. And now what you need to do is rub it in with your fingertips. So just to recap, using your fingers, rub your thumbs over the top of your fingers, in, bring it up and twist. So I'm going to do that until this has been completely rubbed in, and I'll join you back in a sec when I've done it. Perfect, there we go, it's been rubbed in, so my fingertips there. And I give it a little shake as always, and I can see the blobs aren't blobs of fat, so that's good to go. So just a reminder, you can use two types of flour with this one. You've got plain flour, but you can also, and it says on there, use a wholemeal flour as well. So I've got some Dunster watermill, here we go, Dunster watermill flour, all the way from Dunster. So I put a mixture of the two in here. So when I said flour at the start, really you want a mixture. If you don't have wholemeal though, you can just use one or the other. It doesn't have to be both, but it's better if you can. Right, the next stage is to grate the cheese. I've done that just to save time. When you're using the grater, just mind your fingers and fingernails and things like that. So I pop the cheese in, lovely. I grated a bit too much I think, so I'm going to leave a little bit behind. Right, grate the cheese, stir the cheese into the mixture, so I can just do that with my fingers. Lovely, there it is. And then using a palette knife. Now actually, I have to confess, I don't own a palette knife, but I do have a knife. So a palette knife is much wider, and it's quite good for doing this business, like that. So I'm going to try and use a normal knife and see how that works. So I stir the cheese in using a palette knife to form a dough. So I'll add a little bit of cold water, a little bit at a time. This is the stage where it can go all wrong. So just add a little bit of cold water. Don't go mad. I'm actually going to use my hands, I think. I've got cold hands, so that's fine. The reason you use a knife is because you don't want to make this too warm. You don't want to sort of make it sweaty, if you like. So if you have cold hands like me, then you could say you've got pastry hands. So it's very good for making pastry and things like that. If you have very hot hands, you can wash them with cold water, try and cool them down a bit, or use a cold palette knife. Just use a steel knife, and that will stop it from getting too hot. It's coming together, just bring it together. You can just use one hand, and it will help if you use your fingertips. It stops all the heat getting in from the palm of your hands. Just bring it together, and it should just about, there we go, it should form a smooth dough like that. So I'll give that a squeeze into a ball there, and it's looking quite nice and smooth now. So that is ready. I don't want to heat it up too much, so I'm not going to play with it. That's ready to be rolled out onto a lightly floured surface. So I'm going to tidy up, and I will show you that part in a moment. Right, I've got some flour on my rolling pin. I've lightly floured the work surface, and I've got my tray with a bit of baking paper, and it's ready to go. So don't work the pastry too much, just press it out to start with. You don't want your work surface coated with flour because you don't want to dry it out too much. So roll it like this. Mine is cracking a little bit, so I would say that is a little bit dry. I would say that should have had a tiny bit more water in it, but c'est la vie, that's okay. So, it says on your instructions to make it 0.5 centimetres thick, in other words half a centimetre, so that's fine. I'm nearly there. I'd say about the thickness of a pound coin, something like that, or two 50p pieces stacked up on each other, so about that thick is pretty good. If you go thinner, it will still work. If you go thicker, it will still work, but it affects the cooking time. So I think the best thing to do is about a 1 pound thickness. Right, it says to cut it, and I'm being very gentle on my top, but seeing as it's a work surface, I should really put it on a chopping board like this. It doesn't matter if I scratch my chopping board. It's much better than scratching your worktop. So you want some strips like this. You can try and weave them and make some plaits and things like that if you like. Or you can just keep it simple and cut some strips. Pop them on your tray like this. Once you've covered your tray, pop it in the oven, and then it needs to go into the oven for about 10 minutes until they're golden brown. You should see the cheese sort of bubble and go a nice brown texture. So I'm going to pop that in the oven. Oh, right, hopefully. Yep. Hopefully these are nice and crispy. So that's what we're looking for. The cheese has turned a nice brown colour there, and they should be nice and crispy. They're hot out of the oven, so I won't try and pick one up and break it. Once these have cooled down, they should snap. So they should have a nice dry snap to them. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. It was a nice easy one this week, hopefully. You can plait them into all sorts of different shapes and things, so if you fancy switching it up, you're more than welcome. Use a nice strong cheese. A really good strong cheese works well for this as well. Right, enjoy your cheese twists. Bye for now. Ooh, nice snap. Very nice.